Lake Elsinore in Riverside County has a popular hiking trail called the Walker Canyon Trail, and it is a paradise for hikers. From this trail into Walker Canyon can enjoy the all views of Lake Elsinore and the San Jacinto Mountains. However, on June 28, 1989, the tranquility there was shattered by a murder case. Kimberly Little, a 28-year-old known sex worker and drug user, was found lying near Walker Canyon Trail. Little's body was covered with a blue bath towel and was covered in bruises. The autopsy report indicated that she had suffered a severe blow to the head and had cigarette burns on her arms and other parts of her body. Several months later, December 13th, a similarly heinous tragedy occurred in Quail Valley. 23-year-old Christina Leal was found lying on a hillside and lifeless. After the forensic pathologist carefully examined Christina's body, the autopsy report revealed that Christina had obvious binding marks on her wrists and ankles. Her face had deep scratches, and one of her eyes was blackened from a blow. There were 4 stab wounds in the center of her chest, with part of one breast being severed, and her genitals also had at least 2 stab wounds. Most horrifyingly, the forensic pathologist discovered that the person who killed Christina had forcibly inserted a light bulb into her vagina. Those pieces of evidence indicate that before her death, Christina had been bound and subjected to extremely brutal torture by the killer. Since the crime scenes of both Lyle and Christina were near Lake Elsinore, and despite the different times of the crimes, the police were almost certain that the same killer was responsible for both murders. Given that Little was a sex worker and drug user, Christina also had a record of arrests for drug use and prostitution. It appeared that the mysterious killer had a clear animosity towards sex workers or drug users. In early spring of 1990, Riverside County was once again the scene of a brutal murder case. January 18th, Darla Ferguson, 23-year-old, became the victim of this murder case. Her body was found just half a mile away from where Little's body had been found. When found, her upper body was wrapped in a garbage bag, with her waist tightly bound by a rope, and her body showed clear signs of blunt force trauma. Just 1 month later, February 9th, 1990, in Highgrove, near Lake Elsinore, 35-year-old Carol Miller was found dead in a grapefruit orchard. When found, she was naked except for a shirt pulled over her head. She also had 5 fatal stab wounds on her body. 4 murders plunged the community into a state of fear, as residents struggled to imagine that a brutal demon was lurking in their side. Meanwhile, the Riverside County Police were working tirelessly to uncover the truth. Finally, they did discover clues related to the serial murders. As early as before Little's murder, there was a sex worker had suffered a similar attack. On the night of January 10, 1989, Rhonda Jetmore, 27-year-old, was, as usual, on the street looking for clients. And it wasn't not long before she encountered a male client who requested that the sexual transaction take place in a dark alley. Apparently, this was not an unusual request, as everyone has different sexual preferences. However, during the transaction, the client suddenly grabbed her by the neck, saying that he needed some excitement, but his grip grew increasingly tighter. Fearing for her safety, Rhonda quickly retrieved a flashlight from her handbag and struck the client's head with it, allowing her to briefly break free from his control. However, the client did not give up. He pushed Rhonda to the ground, tore at her clothes, and forced his fingers into her mouth. In a moment of desperation, Rhonda bit down hard on his fingers with all her strength. Although one of her teeth was broken, fortunately, the client also stepped back due to the injury. Seizing the opportunity, Rhonda ran to the street and waved and shouted at a car. The driver of the car was someone who specifically protected Rhonda and carried a handgun. Hearing Rhonda's cries for help, he decisively pulled out his gun and fired at the client, who was not far behind Rhonda. In the end, Rhonda was survived, and the client fled the scene of the attack. Although the police questioned Rhonda for some details, unfortunately, due to her fear and the fact that the transaction took place in a dark alley, Rhonda did not remember or could not describe the client's features. Later on November 6, 1990, the body of Cheryl Coker, aged 33, was discovered. Parts of her body were discarded on an abandoned road, while other parts were hidden inside a trash bin. On December 21st, 27-year-old Susan Sternfeld was found dead. She had been posed by the killer in a sexually suggestive manner, and her cause of death was strangulation. On January 19th, 42-year-old Kathleen Nolan's body was found in a landfill near Lake Elsinore, with a white sock stuffed down her throat. July 4th, Sherry Latham, 37-year-old, was found dead, lying face down and naked on the shore of Lake Elsinore. 1 month later, on August 16th, the body of Kelly Hammond was found in an alley in Corona. Her death pose was extremely peculiar. Her right arm was bent and tucked under her abdomen. Her left arm was bent with her hand on the ground and palm facing up. Her left leg was drawn up to her chest, and her right leg was extended outward. September 13th, another murder occurred in Riverside County. A black woman, 30-year-old Catherine McDonald, was the only black victim in the series of murders. Unlike the other victims, her death meant the loss of 2 lives, as the autopsy report revealed that she was 4 months pregnant. Similarly, McDonald had been subjected to brutal torture. The killer had cut a piece of flesh from her neck, stabbed her chest 3 times, partially severed her right breast, and inflicted stab and tear wounds on her genitals. On October 30th, the body of 35-year-old Delia Zamora was found. Although the exact method of the crime could not be confirmed, her manner of death shocked both the police and the forensic pathologists, as her throat had been crushed and broken in half. In the winter of 1991, December 23rd, 39-year-old Eleanor Casares was found in an orange grove near the intersection of Jefferson Street and Victoria Avenue in Riverside. This murder case was also the last one committed by the killer because he was about to be arrested. January 9th, 1992. What was supposed to be an ordinary day in Riverside County with no new murders turned out to be a pivotal moment in the entire case. As usual, the police were patrolling the streets, checking vehicles suspected of violations. During this time, a man named William Suff was pulled over. William was a warehouse clerk in Riverside County, and during the serial murders, he had transported office furniture for the members of the task force investigating the serial murders. A police officer, as a routine check, inspected William's trunk and discovered a blood-stained knife and some evidence allegedly related to the serial murders. Although his silence made the interrogation difficult, the police had already gathered sufficient physical evidence and witness testimonies. On July 19, 1995, in the courtroom of Riverside County, after careful deliberation, the jury found William guilty of 12 murders and the attempted murder of a woman, Rhonda. During the trial, William remained silent and did not testify in his own defense. Later, at the sentencing phase, the prosecutor submitted additional evidence to the court, linking William to a murder that occurred in San Bernardino, and this revealed that William's killings did not begin in 1989, but even earlier. In reality, William's violent behavior can be traced back to September 1973, when his wife, Terrell, fearing his beatings, left home with their daughter, Dejiania. But when the judge dealt with the custody issue, he granted custody of Dejiania to William, who was known to abuse his daughter. On September 25th, William, as he did on many other days, began to beat Dejiania. Unable to control his anger, he inflicted brutal violence on the 2-month-old infant. Ultimately, Dejiania was killed by William's abuse. This murder marked the beginning of William's criminal career. Later records show that, despite being imprisoned in Texas for the murder of his daughter, William did not reform after his release. Instead, he continued to abuse his 3-month-old daughter with his second wife. August 17, 1995, the jury took only 10 minutes to return guilty verdicts on William's 12 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. October 26th of the same year, the trial court, following the jury's decision, ordered William to be sentenced to death. He was sent to the death row at San Quentin State Prison. However, this prison, which had once executed many death row inmates, no longer carried out death sentences, and later, in 2019, California officially abolished the death penalty. Also in 2019, a murder case that had been for over 30 years saw a breakthrough. On February 22, 1986, a murder occurred in South Pasadena, Los Angeles County. A woman dressed in pajamas was found lying in the middle of the street, with multiple stab wounds on her body. Although the South Pasadena police rushed to the scene quickly, the woman had already stopped breathing and was declared dead on the spot. Since she had no identification on her, they could only temporarily list her as Jane Doe 17. In the days following the case, the police received a call. On the other end of the line, a man from the Lake Elsinore area anxiously inquired whether a woman named Kathy Small had been reported missing. He claimed that Small was his roommate and had disappeared several days ago. He then recounted Small's last known whereabouts to the police. According to his recollection, Small was a woman who had lived in the Lake Elsinore area for a few months. Several days prior, she had told him that a man named Bill had contacted her, offering her $50 to drive to Los Angeles with him, and that was the last time he saw Small, after which she vanished without a trace. Later, although the police followed up on numerous leads over the years, Small's murder remained unsolved. On October 11, 2019, the police received a call. The caller reported that a man had died of natural causes across the street from where Small's body was found. Upon arriving at the scene, the forensic experts found many disturbing items in the deceased's home, including a large number of photos of women who appeared to have been attacked and held against their will, as well as a newspaper article about the identification of Small after her murder. They confirmed that Small's death wasn't related to the other persons, but the police realized they had a problem. Forensic technology has gotten a lot better over the years, especially with the rise of DNA technology, but none of the evidence from Small's murder case, including evidence of sexual assault and Small's clothing, had been tested. In August 2020, the police ran DNA tests on these pieces of evidence, and in the end, they found DNA from two males. One was William, while the other one remained unknown. Upon questioning, William admitted to the crime of killing Small. He recalled that in 1986, he worked at a computer repair shop in Lake Elsinore. On the day of the incident, Small walked into his shop and gave him her phone number. That evening, he called Small, saying he would pick her up to go to Los Angeles. During the drive, an argument broke out between them, and in a fit of rage, he took out a knife and stabbed Small, who was sitting in the passenger seat, multiple times. When Small passed away, she left behind 2 young children and a 10-year-old sister. While learning the truth, Small's sister, who lived out of state, wrote a letter. She wrote, "My sister was not a statistic. She was a good sister, a good mother, and a good daughter. She was funny, intelligent, and loving. Although she was a sex worker and a drug user at the time, she was trying to change her behavior and stop using drugs. But just as she was about to take a step forward, her life was cut short." Most of William's victims were sex workers. So, why did he harbor such animosity toward women, especially sex workers, even murdering and abusing his own daughter? The answers lie in William's childhood experiences. He was born into an ordinary family in Torrance, California, and was the eldest of 5 children. Initially, there were no particularly notable events in his early years, and he even showed a talent for music as he grew up. However, it was in this seemingly ordinary family that the seeds of violence and hatred were sown. His mother was a very dominant woman who had a strong controlling influence over his father. Growing up, he witnessed how his mother used coercion and control to get what she wanted. It was this family environment that shaped his personality and behavior, teaching him to treat others in the same manner. For instance, William threatened to kill his wife just to force her to obey his commands. In 1960, when he was 10 years old, his parents separated amid mutual accusations of infidelity. Particularly after his mother separated from his father, her life became chaotic, and she even became a sex worker. That's why William harbored such intense loathing and hatred toward women and sex workers. In 1968, at the age of 18, William met Terrell, who was 15 years old, in a marching band. The two quickly fell deeply in love and got married in 1969. However, married life did not turn out as Terrell had imagined. William's domineering and abusive behavior gradually emerged. He frequently insulted and beat her and even threatened her with death. In November 1970, Terrell gave birth to a boy. In reality, although William's abuse of Terrell continued, his domineering and abusive behavior was directed only at women, not men. He never abused his son. While imprisoned on death row at San Quentin State Prison, William revealed several murders. Although he was not charged or tried for most of them, except for one victim named Sherry Pacer, the victims included Michelle Gutierrez, age 26, who died on October 29, 1986. Charlotte Palmer, age 25, who died on December 10, 1986. Linda Ortega, aged 37, who died on April 29, 1988. Martha Young, age 27, who died on May 2, 1988. Linda Ruiz, aged 37, who died on January 17, 1989. Judy Angel, aged 36, who died on November 11, 1989. Sherry Pacer, age 24, who died on April 27, 1991. William's childhood and family environment laid the groundwork for his later criminal behavior. It is said that two of William's brothers, one had drug problems and the other had pedophilic tendencies. But these painful experiences could never serve as a reason to exonerate William. His violence and need for control not only affected his family but ultimately impacted the entire Riverside County.